morning. Today is Monday, March 31st, 2025. And you believe it is the end of the first quarter of 2025. I'm calling the Municipal Service and Properties Committee to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Bishop.
Here.
Present.
Terrestone. Gray. Here. Casey.
Present.
Kelly. Present. Moore. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. First, we're gonna hear a presentation today, but first we got 5 pieces of legislation that we're gonna consider. I would first want to call up Public Works and Waste. Good morning. You a solo, Commissioner? You solo this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ordinance number 21, 2025. By Council Members Bishop and Griffin, this is the departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to employ one or more. Guys, can you guys, no chatter at the table, please, unless the chair calls on you, okay? This is emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to employ one or more professional consultants to provide educational and training for employees and to enter into contract with the Solid Waste Association of America, SWANA, for a period of 1 year with 1 year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Public Works. All right, Director.
Thank you, Chair. And I do apologize for my chatter at the table. Won't happen again. I do want to, before we get into this piece, one of the things that our department, Director Williams, has really tried to push is training. I've been here for a long time in the city, and one of the things that I didn't see was training. And that was something that I had to do on my own. I did a lot of that on my own, out of my own pocket, out of my own time. And so that is one of the things. So the Division of Waste has really taken a huge step forward in trying to bring training, not just at, sometimes you can get it at the management level, but he's really trying to bring it down to the supervisory and even down to the staff level, which I think is a great thing. So I want to turn it over to Commissioner Pruitt to be able to talk more about his efforts for training.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, so this piece of legislation allows us to enter into a contract with a number of different agencies, including SWAN. That's the acronym stands for Solid Waste Association North America. All of our supervision, they grew up in the division with on-the-job training. And as you continue to make advancements and investments in your division, only having on-the-job training is going to get you so far. They learned the Cleveland way. However, there's many different other techniques and different strategies they can learn from their peers across the nation, as well as just learn some very industry standard training. So this legislation allows us to enter the contract with not only SWANA, but also with a number of different agencies, so that way we can actually invest in our workforce and try to get make them to be all they can be.
Okay. All right, thank you for that breakdown, Director. You mean the Cleveland way is not the best way all the time?
Mr. Chair, it could be.
Could be.
But it's also good to learn other ways.
Okay. All right, I agree. All right, is there any questions on ordinance 21, 2025? Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Director, Assistant Director, Commissioner, has SWANA already been chosen?
Through the chair, no. It's one we're really interested in because we're a member of SWANA. They do have very specific training for supervision that we have identified. We still need to go out to contract with them, but they are one of the key agencies that we work with that gives us a lot of insight on industry-based solutions.
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, does being a member of SWANA automatically give you the privilege of the training?
Through the chair, no, it doesn't. It gives us a discount. You still have to pay for the training. It gives you access to the training, but it's being a member of SWANA gives you a discount.
All right, and then one last question, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner. is this going out for RFP? Or is it direct award?
Through the chair, it is a direct award.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Richard Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions that I definitely will have to ask to the Assistant Director and the Commissioner. Within this ordinance 21-2025, you're talking about training and services for employees. Do we know how many employees are there going to train, and also the frequency of this training taking place for this ordinance?
Through the chair to the councilman, we have 31 members of our supervision. There's 4 classes that we identify for each one of them. In addition to that, there's other waste industry-based training as well for the drivers and the laborers as well.
Okay, and then within that, so it's 4 trainings, so you will schedule that throughout the year for them to be able to have this? And when you say from a year, is this a calendar year or from the year once this ordinance is passed through the chair?
Through the chair, this is it's considered one-time training. It may take us longer than a year to complete it because of when the courses are scheduled. But the goal is to get them through the curriculum.
Okay, and those are the only things, questions I do have. I think I want to make an amendment possibly, Chair.
Okay. Councilman Starr has an amendment.
So when it says on ordinance 21-2025, where it states section 3, that the cost of the contract or contract authorized shall be paid from fund number 01-7013-62024, could we possibly add in the language not to exceed, to section 3? So therefore, we can have some different understanding of how much they will not spend as far as regard to the $75,000.
Okay, is there a second on Councilman Starr's amendment? Second. Okay, Councilman Casey seconds it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Well, first, is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, is there any questions on ordinance 21-2025?
Yes, Chair.
Councilwoman
Yes.
Gray?
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner. Just have a question about what you just stated about your be 31 employees taking a 4-part class, 4-program class. Could you, the different employees that's going to take the class, could you explain the curriculum of the class for each employee going to take that class per se? Chair to the Commissioner.
Through the chair, the 31 are members of our supervision.
Okay.
There is there's a course on just municipal routing and collection. There's a course on recycling collection. There's a course on transportation operations, and there's also a course on fleet management.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Gray. Is there any other questions on ordinance 21-2025? Seeing no further questions, ordinance number 21-25 is approved as amended. Please sign it.
Thank you.
No, I'm gonna go to this one next. Okay, ordinance number 1062. Director, you have any more?
I believe they have me named on, they have me named on this point on those, but I'm really not, this is really going to be a parks kind of thing, but because we started last year, my name's on it.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
still
looking for
concerned the
that.
mayor's office.
All right, ordinance number 1062, 2024. This is by Council Members House, Jones, Bishop, and Griffin. This is a departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Works to accept a donation of 3 single-unit public restroom structures from Campus District, Inc., a community development corporation for the general public use to be installed by Department of Public Works. Okay, all right. Chief Teelman?
Thank you. Bonnie Teeuwen, Chief Operating Officer. This piece has been before this committee before. It was held. Since then, we've had some opportunity to meet with various council members on this item. Want to thank Councilwoman House Jones for her initiation of this and for her patience in working with us, working as we work through the logistics of this. Also, like to thank Councilman Starr on his leadership on this as well. I think we're here to answer any questions that that you may have had from the last committee meeting.
Okay, first, let me see. We have a breakdown of all of the costs associated with the installation, maintenance, and the construction of these loos.
Pass the mic down to Abby.
Just take that one there.
Through the chair to the councilman, hi, Abby Henry in the mayor's office. We have estimated that it will cost, I believe, around $1,600 a month per structure for cleaning, which is about $20,000 a year per loo. The installation is very specific to the site, so I'll defer to Chief Tewan on the difference between the Canal Basin site and the Perk Plaza site.
Okay, so you say $1,600 per annually per installation?
Through the chair, $1,600 a month per structure for maintenance. The
Okay.
installation depends on the site, so I will let Chief Tewan handle that one.
Okay, so, and you say that construction costs is gonna vary per site, is that what you're saying? So you don't have a figure for that?
Yeah. Councilman, we have two different types of locations. We have one that's being installed at Perk Park by itself. That will be done with our requirements contract. And then we have two that will be installed in Canal Basin Park. While they, in the Phase 1 improvements for Canal Basin Park, that will be included in the bid items when we make the improvements. We don't know what those exact costs will be because they will be bid out through the contractor. We estimate that the cost for installation at Perk Park is, what is that number, Abby? Do you know? Was it 147?
I believe a little bit less than that.
Yeah, the general estimate we got was around I thought it was 147, something like that.
Okay. So these dollars, where are these dollars in the budget? Did you include these in what department are these dollars
So
going to be budgeted
So
for?
for Canal Basin Park, those dollars will be part of the park improvements. So it'll be capital money for the Canal Basin Park improvement.
That's for the construction,
For the installation, correct?
construction and installation.
Yes.
So
So
it'd be capital dollars.
yes. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a connection to the utilities, and there needs to be a concrete pad placed, and then the structure is placed, and then they make the connections from the rough-in utility connection to the actual Portland Loo itself.
Okay. And the ongoing maintenance, where is that in the budget?
So that will be coming from the Parks and Recs maintenance or operations budget. It will be, the actual maintenance for the Perk Park will be done by DCI, Downtown Cleveland, Inc. And the Canal Basin, we don't have the actual agreement, but we envision that it would be the Metro Parks, because they would be responsible for the maintenance of Canal Basin Park. We do have to note as a backup plan, our Parks Department, they do have crews that actually maintain the porta-johns, and that those same crews can be dispatched to our Portland Loos if we need them. However, we're not anticipating needing them at this time.
Okay. All right, is there any questions on ordinance 1062, 2024? Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Chief, so there's two of these, correct?
There's 3 of them.
3 of them?
Yes.
One's being maintained by the Metro Parks at Canal Basin? And then
We're placing 2 at Canal Basin.
2 are going
One
to be
at-
maintained by the Metro Parks?
We do not have a signed agreement with them yet, but we're anticipating with that ask.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, what happens if they say no?
Then we have the backup plan of our Parks Department performing those duties, just like they do with the porta potties.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, you're saying that parks, coming out of the parks budget is going to be the $20,000 a year to clean one of the loos?
In Perk Park, that's correct.
Okay. And then for the install for the utilities, do we know, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, how much that's costing and where that money's coming from?
We do have estimates. We reached out to the city of Columbus to get, because they have these Portland Loos, and we reached out to them to find out what their costs are, and it's approximately $100 per month per structure for the water and the electric.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, the electric in these, Cleveland Public Power?
Yes, we are anticipating using
You're anticipating. I've heard that a lot. Are we using Cleveland Public Power?
in both sites, Cleveland Public Power is available to make the connections, and that would be our goal.
Mr. Chairman, to the chief, so we're not, you can't sit here and say we're using Cleveland Public Power today.
To the best of my knowledge, we will want to use Cleveland Public Power, but until it's actually installed, I can't say that. But you know as well as I do that it's always our goal to use Cleveland Public Power.
I get that. That's why
Yeah.
I thought for sure that when you came to the table, you'd be telling me that we're going with Cleveland Public Power, that would have been worked out already. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, who will be paying the water bill? Is that part of the $20,000 a year to maintain, or whatever it is, $1,600 a month, I
Yeah,
think it was said?
the water bill is part of the $100 a month utility bill, so it would be water and sewer, and that
Okay.
would come from the Parks
And
Department.
that's coming from Parks as well?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, Councilman Starr. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, to the chief, are these ADA accessible, and will there be adult changing stations in them?
They are ADA accessible. They do not have adult changing tables in them.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, why not?
Through the chair to the councilman, they come with baby changing stations, but there's not currently a package to purchase that comes with an adult changing station.
Mr. Chairman, to the chief, can we find one?
We will research that and see if they're available. Might not be with this. Keep in mind, this is a donation of Portland Loos that have already been purchased by the campus district. And also keep in mind that this is a pilot. Our hope is to put these around the city in various locations, and we will research adult changing tables, and if it's not a Portland Loo or if it's some other similar structure, we will look for that.
And then one last question, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to hold you up. Are these unisex?
Yes, they are.
And then how close are the two at Canal Basin to each other?
They will be proposed to be next to each other.
Next to each other?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Richard Starr.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chief, as well as the team. I did get a chance to meet with the team to discuss some of this. legislation regarding 1062 and got more detailed information. But my question would be, from the presentation that I sat down and met with you all, that presentation, I think it would be more helpful for my colleagues if they had that attached to this, because they would get some of the questions that they may have possibly would have been answered. When I sat down and met with you all, I did talk about the maintenance. I did discuss how do we add this over there. I did compare and contrast what it looks like versus porta potties, as well as what they're doing in Columbus compared to what we're trying to accomplish. And I believe if we had that presentation, I believe a lot of my colleagues would definitely be more in support of this, because right now it's just a legislation that says we're taking a donation, we're trying to get it into the city in certain different areas, but it don't have that much context or information on what happens once we accept this donation. And I think that's something that you hear some of my colleagues are hesitant on. So through the chair, I would definitely ask to the chief is, why didn't we get the whole shebang of the presentation attached to this ordinance?
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Abby, was this presented, was the presentation presented the first time this was at the table?
Correct. Through the chair to the councilman, the first time that we presented this piece back in October, we shared the presentation that we shared with you when we met a few weeks ago, which we also shared in other meetings with council members.
And
I do have copies of the executive summary if anyone would like a copy.
Yeah.
Of that.
Well,
We're happy
let me
to
say, hold it
send
just a minute. Well, when we hear this piece of legislation, we need the presentation that was done up front. If we expect to pass this piece of legislation, we have to have all of the information at the table each time we come to the table. Go ahead, Councilman Starr.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief, did you have a comment?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, my comment was we can re-forward that to you.
So, and through the chair, I think if we refresh our tablets, it was just added, our staff just sent it over, so we can have some of those in-depth conversations. Because one of the things that I had was, okay, we accept this donation, who would definitely actually maintain it? Obviously, who would be the utility services? Is it ADA compliance? Then also, is this something that we're looking into exploring for other parts of the neighborhood? Which one of my discussion was, is this something we can look into getting into different other parks and not just in 3 locations, which is primarily the pilot program, and then also getting confirmation through Public Works that they have the staffing capacity to maintain these on top of the work that they're currently doing. So I did get a lot of that answered within my meetings, and I know through the question through the chair, after we held this in October, were the team able to meet with all the members of municipal services, or did they just meet with a few of us individually through the chair?
Through the chair to the councilman, we met, I believe, with all but one member of the committee.
Okay. And then through that, I mean, other than me seeing, I'm looking at this presentation now, most of the questions that I asked for and talked about was addressed through the meeting. But I definitely want to ask, what would be the relationship, obviously, with our counterparts over in the county? Because when I see that it's got 3 locations, in 3 locations added, 2 of them are in the city would be owned, but then the other one through the county. What was the reason why the county didn't want to help own all 3 of them through the chair?
I don't have that answer. Mark, do you?
To the committee chair, to the councilman, as part of this pilot program that's now gone on for 4 years, the reason the county took on their site was they originally were going to put it at 2100 Lakeside at the men's shelter, and there was not the utility infrastructure to put it in, so they're putting it at the Family Services Center at 17th and Payne, and their commitment is that they are tying in the Portland Loo into the buildings infrastructure, and so they're maintaining it, they're doing it, so that was their commitment as part of this project. When we did this during the previous administration, the commitment was that the county would do that. They would own one of them, and the other 3 would move to the city.
And through the chair to Executive Director, Mark Lemon, I would definitely ask, do we have something in writing that states this as far as the agreement with the county? Because sometimes we may have this agreement, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, they come back and say, well, we need the city to own it. And then next you know, we start looking at a different cost to be added into the other two that we may have information. So do we have anything in writing regarding this agreement with the county? Through the chair.
To the council president, to the chair. Yes, it was actually part of a board resolution that, as we're doing right now, we gave it over to the county as that, and as I have been authorized to give the other 3 over to the city.
All right, and those are the only questions I do have, but just for context, when we're in municipal services and all committees, having that presentation, even if it was presented in October, then it comes back later, still having it, because I see you added some different information to the presentation from different meetings, I'm assuming, that you got from meeting with each member of the committee. So that's all the question I have, Chair, and I yield.
All right, thank you, Councilman Starr. Councilwoman Deborah Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo off my other colleagues. The restrooms are going to be installed for the unhoused. It says on there, it said for the unhoused. I just want to be clear.
The restrooms are intended for public use.
For public use, but it said the city unhoused population. So just reiterate that again of the locations, because I'm not quite clear of the locations where they're going to be installed.
So the
Chair to the chief.
Thank you, through the chair to the councilwoman. The one location is Perk Park, which is East 12th and Chester. That's where they have Walnut Wednesday, the food trucks. So it's around Perk Park there. And then the other 2 are Canal Basin, which is over the park it's parking and cleared land down in the flats, kind of by the Flatiron Cafe, kind of in the back behind there.
Okay.
Where Settlers Landing is in that area.
Okay. So, Chair to Chief, are these permanent restrooms? Like you're gonna build them with like brick installment where you can walk in and lock the door and?
So they're prefabricated metal structures. There's a picture of them in your presentation, but they will be permanent structures, but they're prefabricated metal structures.
Okay, sorry, I don't have that presentation.
On the
That
tablet,
was good.
Councilwoman.
Okay, I didn't look through it. Thank you. Okay, all right. Okay, I remember the presentation as well. Okay, and Chair to the Chief, just one more question. This may be off. One more statement. This may be off from this legislation. Now, when Councilman Starr said, are these going to be installed in other places? As you know, in our parks, we have brick restrooms that's been closed for years. To that, is something in the future going to be, can this be replaced from the restrooms that's been locked up and closed up for years due to bad activity? Can we revisit that to have this done and open up the restrooms in the parks? Chair to the Chief.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman. We're intending for this to be a pilot, see how it goes, but that would be a good opportunity if for some reason we have facilities that get vandalized on a regular basis. These are somewhat vandal-proof. They're built with the intent that, there's bad actors out there that are going to try and destroy these, and these are industrial strength. So that would be an easy installation because the utilities are already into the slab, into that location. So that would be a good opportunity to add these in future locations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, Chief.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions on this piece of ordinance 1062, 2024? Chief, I think I'm not exactly sure if you if you are, if I communicated this. Matter of fact, I'm sure that I haven't communicated this to you, but I have met with some of the other members of your team as far as the louvers being in places. We have parks, existing parks in the city of Cleveland, that restrooms are not, just like the councilwoman just stated, the restrooms are not functioning. And we have parks in the city of Cleveland, we don't have any restrooms at all. And to have 2 Portland louvers being proposed to be installed in a park that's yet to be constructed, I think is, I think it brings up, are we doing this in an equitable manner throughout the city? So we do want restrooms available in our public spaces, in our public parks, not just in a certain area of the city. All right. All right. Is there any other questions on ordinance 1062? Seeing no further questions, ordinance number 1062 is approved. Please sign it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance number 251, 2025. By council members McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin. This is a departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the director of the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects to sell city-owned air rights interests no longer needed for the city's public use located at the right-of-way of Scranton Road, also known as Eagle Avenue, to GPP Medical Facility, LLC, for the purpose of constructing a building and enter into an agreement for the construction, operation, maintenance, inspection, and repair of the overhead structure within the air rights parcel above the Scranton Road right-of-way. Okay, Director?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. So we've been at the city council table several times about the Bedrock project, and they have broken ground on the first building for that project, which is called the Cleveland Clinic Global Peak Performance Center. And so to build this, there's 2 parts of the property on either side of Eagle Avenue, and they propose to have part of the building over the right-of-way, and that would require the sale of air rights to Bedrock to perform that construction. So to my right, I have Commissioner DeGennaro, and she's going to go through the specifics of this proposed ordinance.
Thank you, Director. As the Director mentioned, the building, the Global Peak Performance Center that is being constructed as part of the Bedrock development actually straddles the right-of-way of Scranton Avenue, which is also known as Eagle Avenue. And so we worked with Bedrock, they worked with their surveyors to create an air rights parcel for the portion of the building that will be over the right-of-way to be located within this air rights parcel. We're splitting it off, and the air rights parcel will be sold to Bedrock for a appraised value of $120,000 so that they can construct their building within that parcel. In addition, this legislation authorizes an agreement with Bedrock for maintenance of this structure. It's not technically a bridge, but we are requiring that, the city has the ability to inspect it as we would a bridge because it's over our right-of-way, and that it will be maintained so that it's structurally sound, so that, because it does go over the right-of-way. And there are maps in your packet that show what the parcel looks like, the air rights parcel itself, and some renderings of what the building will look like.
Okay, what package?
You should have maps that were sent to you on your tablet, no?
Do you not have this?
All right, I'm going to open this ordinance 251 up for questions. Is there any questions on ordinance 251, 2025? All right, no one has any questions on ordinance 251, 2025 is approved. Please sign. All right, you got another piece there? 246. All right, ordinance number 246, 2025. This is by council members Jones, Bishop, and Hairston, and Griffin. It's a departmental request. Emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Parks and Recreation and Community Development to enter into a property exchange agreement with the Board of Education of the Cleveland Municipal School District for the transfer of various properties between the parties to facilitate the efficient use of real estate for public purpose, including construction of a new JFK High School athletic stadium at the property near the new JFK High School and city-owned JFK Recreation Center. So that is a typo right there, city-owned JFK Rec Center, because that's not called a JFK Rec Center. That's called the Frederick Douglass, correct? Am I correct?
Apologies, Chairman. Yes, you're correct.
Okay. All right. Authorizing the mayor and commissioners of purchasing and supplies to acquire and convey the properties and authorize one or more agreements between the Cleveland Municipal School District and the Director of Parks and Recreation relating to the construction and shared use of the new stadium for a term of 15 years and renewing automatically from year to year thereafter until terminated by either party. All right, so that's a lot there. So that's more than just a couple things happening, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the legislation authorizes the land swap with CMSD. These land swaps are authorized by state law where the real estate of one or the other party is determined to be mutually beneficial, to have it put back into productive reuse. And so this is not the first land swap that we've done with CMSD. We value them as a partner in putting this real estate into productive reuse. In this land swap, there will be 2 land bank parcels that will be transferred to CMSD for FDR Academy for school purposes. There will be, in addition, and those are at 773 Parkwood Drive and 777 Parkwood Drive near CMSD's FDR Academy. In addition, there will be a land bank parcel located at 3172 West 44th Street that will be transferred to CMSD for school purposes for Newcomers Academy. So those are lands that the city is giving to CMSD, transferring to CMSD. CMSD, in exchange, will transfer its former JFK High School facility on Harvard Avenue to the city for future community and economic development purposes. And there was an RFP that was issued, managed by the Department of Community Development. They issued an RFP for the redevelopment of the site. A developer was selected. And so that will be a benefit to the city. In addition, because that site is so much larger than the land bank parcels that we're transferring to CMSD, and CMSD agreed to move the track and field that is currently or was at the former JFK High School site to the new JFK High School site adjacent to Frederick Douglass Recreation Center. The city will contribute $2.1 million in bond funding for the construction of a new athletic facility at the new site. That funding has already been approved from previous year's bond sales. So that's we just mentioned that as background information for this legislation, but that will happen as well. The new facility will be shared by CMSD and the city, since it is right next to our Frederick Douglass Rec Center. The school will use it during football season, but the city will be able to use it for its Muni Football League for practice there on the weekends and evenings. And CMSD will cover the maintenance of the facility, the track that goes around the stadium. In addition, there will be a discus and a shot put facilities located right next to the JFK, the athletic stadium, and those are on Frederick Douglass Rec Center property, but they will be maintained by CMSD. And all of this, the track and field, and the stadium will be able to be used by the city as well. It's under a shared use agreement. Let's see. So the Muni Football League practices, or their season is from April through November, which does not coincide with when the school will be using the new athletic stadium. So it'll be a nice partnership. We'll be able to share that facility.
So you say the Muni football is from April to November?
Yes.
That's the season?
Yes.
Oh, flag football. What about tackle football for the Muni League? Right. So let me ask you this. Do CMSD charge Muni football now to use the JFK Stadium site that they played at JFK? Do they charge them at the present time?
I'm not sure if they do. Holly?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that they do not, but we could confirm that with CMSD, but my understanding is they do not.
Okay, so now, first, the city share of what is the total cost of the construct the stadium at the new JFK field site?
4.1 million. So the city is contributing 2.1 million. CMSD will put in 2 million. That's for the phase 1 improvements. CMSD's board has approved phase 2 improvements. They've approved, the phase 2, but the funding hasn't been put in place quite yet for it.
Okay, have we ever funded, and Director, I'm not exactly sure if you know, or either of you, have we ever funded a stadium at CMSD before?
Mr. Chairman, not since I've been here. I haven't been here all that long, though, but I know since I've been here, we haven't funded a stadium. Yeah, so I know this is a little bit of an unusual situation because the community was really encouraging CMSD to move the stadium with the new school, and that wasn't possible financially at the time. So negotiations continued between the city and CMSD to try to encourage them to do that, not just for our kids, but also to free up the land at the old JFK site for a better development. Keeping the stadium, keeping the track and the football field at the old site was problematic because our old JFK Rec Center was demolished, and that's where the kids would use bathrooms and changing rooms. And so it really came down to a question of, is that a good place to keep the track and field? And did CMSD have the money to move it to where the new school was? Could it be a better amenity for the community if it was next to our Frederick Douglass Rec Center? And so that's why in the 2022 bond sales, we set aside the $2.1 million that came through council for the use of that money for towards the new track and field at the new JFK High School.
Okay. And so, and this question is for either you. We're going to get to use this stadium for 15 years in this deal. What is the city using stadiums presently in any kind of capacity anywhere, like John Marshall, wherever we have a stadium, does the city have sponsored events that we need a stadium for that purpose? Track, football, or whatever sport.
To the chair, it's my understanding that the city uses the Collinwood Stadium right now for programs and services for competitive sports. And then we also have athletic field that belongs to the city next to Lonnie Burton Center and Park.
Okay, so what programs do we use the stadium at Collinwood for?
To the chair, I believe that the Collinwood Stadium is used for football primarily, but if there are other sports, it could also be used for that if there is an athletic field needed.
So Muni, is that what I'm understanding? Muni football is played at Collinwood. I know that. I've been to a game. So is that what you're referring to?
To the chair, yes, that is correct. Muni football at Collinwood.
So does CMSD charge Muni football any dollars for the use of Collinwood Stadium?
To the chair, I need to check on that answer, but to my understanding, there is not a financial exchange of money for use of the Collinwood facility. But I will double check on that to provide a definitive answer.
Okay, Director, you have that answer?
That's my understanding as well. My understanding is that the city and CMSD have a relationship to share facilities for either our residents or for our students that are at the CMSD schools without a charge back to each other. But again, I'll confirm that, and we can report back to council.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to go to Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of things here. First of all, this piece of legislation is actually 3 pieces of legislation rolled into one, and this should have came to us as 3 separate pieces of legislation. So that's the first thing that raises a question in this whole thing in general. Mr. Chairman, you know that the city of Cleveland also funds Muni football, so there's that aspect of the use of the stadium. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the directors or the commissioners, is the Haslam Sports Group putting any money into this project?
My understanding through the chair is the answer is no.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, every time we want to use John Marshall Field, right, we have to get charged for it. If a community wants to use it, or even if we want to use it, we have to pay for the use of that facility. And in addition, when John Marshall High School was redone, they were supposed to put a track in there, and they never did. So for the city to turn around and want to pay $2.1 million to CMSD for them to construct, this is a CMSD project. I have issues with giving CMSD $2.1 million in order to construct a stadium, and then ultimately, over the use of 15 years, with the $2.1 million, it's $140,000 a year. Thank you very much for the use of the facility. That's an awful lot. So I have a couple of red flags. I'm hesitant on this piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman. I believe that CMSD should be at the table.
Through the chair to the
Okay.
councilman.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies.
I don't have my glasses on. I didn't look all the way down the table. I apologize. You know, this council already gives CMSD $1 million a year for programming. And now you're coming back looking for $2.1 million. We would love to have a stadium on the south side of the city as well. There's already a stadium at Collinwood, and I'm not saying that JFK doesn't deserve the stadium, but does JFK deserve a stadium? We just put a brand new rec center there. Should we be putting millions of dollars into the stadium as well when it's a CMSD project? We all know CMSD, and no disrespect to CMSD, but you've been in the news lately with some misspending, you know, with sending people to conferences and stuff like that, and we know that CMSD has a bigger budget than the city of Cleveland, and here you are with your hand out again, right? I have reservations regards to this one of the biggest one is it's three different pieces of legislation rolled into one. So if you don't agree with one of the pieces, it looks like you're not agreeing with the other two, which is my big thing. It's not that I'm for the land swap. It's not for the use of the facility for 15 years, but I'm not for giving CMSD $2.1 million just so that we could have the right to use the stadium for $140,000 a year.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to the councilman. So the 2.1 million was approved in 2022
don't
through
care when
City
it was
Council.
approved.
And part of the reason why it was important to the city was to free up the old JFK track and field site for redevelopment. And so we have, when we went out to RFP the site through to the Department of Community Development to find a redeveloper for the site, it was based upon the fact that CMSD was moving towards getting a design, getting a budget, moving towards this new stadium to move forward. So our promise of $2.1 million back in 2022 was really the impetus for us to be able to move forward so that today in 2025, we do have a developer selected. We do have the Department of Community Development working with the developer so that when this new, I believe the track and field is closed currently, but when this new track and field is open, there's going to be a spot for our Muni League to play and also for their school events to happen in this campus-like setting that we created at the Frederick Douglass Park.
And then, Mr.
So that was
Chairman,
really the concept.
To the director, so then what happens to Collinwood? There's not that many Muni football games throughout the year. So now you're going to move everything over to JFK, and then what happens to the Collinwood Stadium?
Through the chairman, the councilman, my understanding is that the Muni League that practiced and played at the JFK rec center, at the rec center in the field are the ones that would be moving to the new field at the new JFK rec center.
Which is one team. So we're building this for one team. Because like we have one team that plays over out of John Marshall, right? So then we have one at Collinwood, and maybe the chairman or Councilman Starr know more about it than I do, but then that means you just got one team. You got a whole stadium for, at Collinwood for one team. You got a new stadium at JFK for another team. I don't know how many. I'm assuming there's probably one on the south side, somewhere over by Rhodes. I don't know. I know John Marshall has one. So we're building these stadiums for one team, so they can have their home. It just, to me, it seems like, what happens to Collinwood?
Through the chairman and the councilman, we're really building it for the community. There's also a track that anybody can walk on.
Yeah, I've heard that story coming from CMSD before, and it hasn't come to light, at least over at John Marshall.
Through the chairman and the councilman.
And I know that's not you.
Right, but the current JFK track is used by the community all the time.
Yeah, well, we had one at Marshall, and when they redid the field, they took it out and never put it back in with the promise that they would. So that's my history with CMSD giving back to the community, right? Do what you want, Mr. Chairman, but this won't be without objection. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. I'm going to go Councilman Richard Starr.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councilman Casey brought up some very good points, but something I definitely would ask, because last football season, Collinwood football field was closed. There was supposed to have been some renovations and upgrades done to that field, and it was closed, and it messed up a lot of challenges with the Muni League football team, because there was talks and conversation that the football field was getting upgraded, the track and all the locker rooms, all type of different things, but it never happened. So they closed. The Muni League was told like around April, maybe May, that the field would not be available. Now, one of the things that Muni League has is right now they have over 100 teams from participating in there. So they may have 70 or 80 different organizations. They may have about 20 to 30 organizations participating in Muni League football, but each organization have about 5, 6, 7 different teams. So on a given day of the weekend, a Saturday, a Sunday, they will have the field being used as early as 9 o'clock up until 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the evening. And if you're familiar with Muni League football, It's not just the football. You have the cheerleading team. You have the fans, the whole community as a whole. So one of the things that we have when we close these fields down during this type of time of the year, it puts everything across. So now you have a team from possibly the west side traveling to, if John F. Kennedy is open, to play and participate, and then you got a team coming from there because they're trying to find usage in the field. I think the timing is something we definitely need to be more strategic on coordinating when we're talking about these different stadiums. And my question would be, since last year, have any upgrades have happened, or have Collinwood Field been completed through the chair?
Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to CMSD for a response on that.
No, so Collinwood football field was supposed to have some upgrades to their football field last year, and the field was shut down where games were not playing at. As of today, have all the renovations or upgrades to the Collinwood field took place?
No.
No, so therefore we're going on to a second year where this Collinwood field would not be able to be used, and it got never done. Through the chair.
It isn't available to us. The renovations have not taken place. They are not completed at Collinwood.
So therefore, now that means what CMSD has done for their own football leagues, varsity football sports, is moved a lot of their games over to Bump Taylor Field, Patrick Henry.
Yes.
So now you have different area, different neighborhoods into a different area when they feel that they have such as a home field for Collinwood School is not being able to use. Therefore, where the championship game and most of the league-wide for Muni League hosted at Collinwood, now we're about to go on the second year, and we do not have this field upgraded. My question would be through the chair, why? What is taking so long for this field to get upgraded? We shut it down last year around this time. Why we're here again a year later, nothing has happened, and now we're going to go 2 years without having a field available for the students as well as the community. Through the chair.
My understanding is that's not CMSD property.
So it would be the city who's doing this?
Correct.
So through the chair to Director Mocat or anyone?
Do you know the answer? Mr. Chairman and Councilman Starr, we can get information from Desiree at CMSD and from Commissioner Gissentanner at Park and Rec, but I don't think any of us here have an answer on the status of that particular football field. It looks like Councilman Hairston may need to say something.
Can I, Mr. Chair?
Councilman Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So early in the year, one of the coaches in the Collinwood community, I did reach out to Councilman Polensky and I about the same issue. Last year, there were some issues. This year, they received a schedule showing that there was no participation activity on the field this year. We did reach out to Commissioner Gissentanner, who indicated to us that they expect that for the renovations to be completed before the summer. However, there will be no activities during the spring, no track and field during the springtime at the Collinwood Stadium, and did indicate that they were going to communicate that with the athletics director over at CMSD. Wanted to give them a few months. That was in January, end of January, when we had that conversation. Councilman Polensky and I give them at least until April, which is tomorrow, to really work out the schedule and make sure that they are on track before we reached out again to make sure that the renovations will be complete for the summer for our teams to be able to utilize the field. Councilman Starr is correct that we cannot go into another year with this stadium being out of commission in these different neighborhoods. No matter how much we want people to all come together and kumbaya, that's just not the case many times, right? And not only because of people expect violence, no, because there's capacity, there's limits to gathering at a lot of these facilities. Like Bump Taylor is although it looks large, the lot is very small. right? People park across the grass, down the streets. Collinwood has an actual lot that's next to it. You can use the plaza next door. So there's pros and cons to each site, and to have all of these folks crammed at one location consistently becomes a burden. So we really hope that these renovations do be completed by the summer or before the summer, so that way these teams can utilize the facility. You know, they've been waiting for these upgrades and these enhancements for years now. And so we just want to make sure that they are actually being done, and they are on time and on schedule, you know, for the season. So thank you.
All right, Councilman Harris. Councilman Starr?
Yes, and that's a great point that my colleague, Councilman Harrison, brought up, because it's just difficult. And on top of that, the CMSD and the Cleveland Muni League football program, I don't think the relationship is as nice as we try to make it seem. Because, prime example, when you talk about East Professional, when they have the East Professional Center, say for instance, when Muni League wants to host a championship game, not a championship, a cheerleading competition there, they're getting charged, Muni League getting charged a bundle of dollars just to host a cheerleading competition there. But then on the back end, the CMSD school was hosting a cheerleading competition there themselves. So it's like, what is the actual relationship? If the city of Cleveland is providing the most of the funding to an organization such as Cleveland Muni, which has been around for over 100 years, but when it comes to a partnership where our kids go to these schools, the Muni League then have to take from their small budget and pay fees and costs, when we should be able to have that already in your budget. It should be already a relationship where you cover that so they can be able to do something for our kids. Because if the ultimate goal is to help support our neighborhood, our students, our families, we should be opening our doors for facilities without having to make them pay that cost. I believe that as long as our facilities are open and the lights are on, we have a better chance of having more safer neighborhoods. But once we start making restrictions, and now we have to then move the cheerleading competition from Muni League to public auditorium, where we already are working on some different changes for that to allow it to be more cost efficient for the Muni League, that is kind of hard. So my question is, through the chair to CMSD rep, what is actually the relationship do we have with organizations such as Muni League football when they are being charged for facility rentals and all these different things when it comes to just working with our kids? Through the chair, do we have any understanding of what that actual relationship looks like?
My understanding is we charge for custodian overtime for those events. And that is it.
Okay, and then on an average, for a 5-hour or just a full work day, do we know what's the actual cost for those type of events, or what the average cost for a custodial? Because I know in order for you to open your building, you need to have someone in administration, as far as leadership, executive leadership, such as a principal, custodian, there to open up the building and stay there throughout the duration. But then on top of that, you would definitely need security. Do we have like an estimated cost of what that is each for just one event for 8 hours or something for one day?
I don't have that offhand. It's time and a half for the custodian, and then security. If security is needed, that we'd have to utilize our security staff.
Okay,
That depends on the number of individuals who are at the site.
I would love to, if we can, put a request to our staff to work with CMSD as well as Department of Recreation and MOCAP to figure out that actual cost on an average event where you have fully staffed to be able to rent out a facility for CMSD, and also figure out why is it costing Muni League an organization like that so much to use these facilities when it's already in the budget as far as the facility and maintenance. Definitely that. And I do have an amendment that I definitely want to read into this ordinance as well, Chairman.
Okay, Councilman Richard Starr has an amendment to ordinance number 246, 2024. All right, Councilman Starr?
Yes, an ordinance number 246-2024 in the section 1, where it says in the title, line 10, and in section 1, line 7, where you should strike JFK and insert Frederick Douglass in both places. So therefore, this ordinance reads that it's not just JFK Recreation Center, it's actually Frederick Douglass Recreational Center.
Okay. All right, so Councilman Starr has an amendment on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Harris seconds it. Is there any discussion? So I guess I have a discussion piece. In the ordinance, on the emergency ordinance, on the top of the piece of legislation on page 1, also, Councilman Starr, there says city-owned JFK Recreation Center. So would you want to change that wording in that right there in the top of the ordinance?
Yes, sir. At the top of the ordinance where it says under an emergency ordinance, right there down on line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Under an emergency ordinance, under section at the top of the ordinance on line number 9 where it says city-owned JFK Recreation Center, please insert Frederick Douglass in there as well.
Okay. All right. So is there any discussion, any other discussion on ordinance number 246, 2025? Okay.
Chairman.
Councilwoman Mara.
Thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate the robust discussion because, you know, our Muni League football teams are just a lifeline in the community and they're really beloved. And, you know, we've, of course, been working about Stefanski Stadium, which has also been a Muni League site. And, you know, I think something I have continued to struggle with around Muni League is, you know, it is just such a critical community asset, but we don't have a lot of insight into the funding and structure. And we ask the parents and volunteer coaches to provide so much for their teams. You know, they're paying for the helmets, they're paying for the pads. And I guess my question, you know, for maybe the whole table is, you know, what could be a useful step for us to understand how to really support Muni League as a community asset? You know, you're here because of the fields, right? And this is a key element to it. But you know, we provide $100,000 of funding out of the city council budget. And so I wonder, maybe just to the chairman and of course to Councilman Starr, because you are such a advocate and you know Muni League inside and out, how can we, you know, could we have a day where we bring folks to the table and discuss what we need to really support these teams so that we're not asking parents to shoulder the requirements?
So I'm gonna have them answer your question. I'm gonna call you up and I'm gonna have them answer your question. You got a lot of great points, but we are still trying to finish this amendment. Okay.
Oh, fair. I didn't realize we were still with it. I apologize, Chairman.
We're trying to finish this amendment up, and then we're gonna come back to you. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman.
All right.
I apologize for that.
So, is there any? So, all in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. So, ordinance 246, 2025, as amended. All right. We're gonna go back to Councilman Starr. Councilman Starr.
Yes, and to the point that Councilwoman Rebecca Maurer was making, I believe the answer to your question would be is a collective unit approach. When you talk about different sporting organizations and teams in the city of Cleveland, we're one of the few cities where we have all 3 major sports teams. But one thing I can say about the Guardians is they fund all baseball in Northeast Ohio. When you talk about basketball, the Cavs has funded a lot of different initiatives as far as basketball through youth sports throughout the city of Cleveland. But when you talk about our friends over here on the lake, they do not put that type of investment into football, but a lot of our kids participate in football in Northeast Ohio. So I believe the amount of funding that they allocate to Muni League is a little bit, 20,000 or a little bit more. But when you talk about the city of Cleveland, we went from 80,000 for the last 30 years until 2022. We doubled that funding and went up to $160,000. And on top of that, we pass a PIF down each year as a council to give an additional 40,000. So they're close to up to 200,000 for us. But when you talk about the number of teams, the number of organizations, that is something that needs to be addressed. I definitely will tell you that the Browns do help support with different equipment initiatives, different grants through NFL and different foundational purposes. But I believe the actual amount of money that is needed on an annual basis for organizations such as Muni League to operate and get to the next standard, we should be talking about north of 500,000 easily to be able to address some of these needs. So I do support, and I would definitely reach out to the chair and this committee for us to possibly bring all these different individual parties to the table for us to get an understanding of how we work together, from CMSD to 3 teams, the private sector, and all individuals, to say, how do we put all of our eggs in a basket to help become solutions to different issues. Our kids are crying out for help, but if you give them the support and give them the mentorship and have them guide them through there, it'd be a better place, because most times that's how we connect our kids.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. All right, thank you, Councilman Starr. You got a point on that, Councilman?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add in, I think bringing everyone to the table makes a lot of sense, because, we make Muni League get all their sources from different places, and it's confusing for the players, it's confusing for the families, it's confusing, frankly, like I have had teams that come and go within Slavic Village, right? Southside Seahawks, Slavic Village Bears, and, we want to support those teams, but having clarity within their budget and what we're asking of parents versus what we're providing as a city, I think is really critical. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Councilwoman Deborah Gray.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just want to, thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to some funding that you had stated earlier. You said that you got 1.4 million bond funding from where and whom?
Through the chair to the councilwoman, it's $2.1 million in bond funding was approved from the sale of bonds in 2022 to contribute for the stadium.
Okay, for the stadium. Okay. I just want to clear that. I had one thing. That's it. So I'm going to clear that up.
All right, Councilwoman. Next, I'm going to go to Councilman Anthony Harrison, and I'm going to come back to Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. I thank you to my colleague, Councilman Starr, for his comments. There's nobody better on this body that I trust to discuss muni leagues than him. Somebody who has been deeply engaged and involved with these teams. In fact, it was because of him that we increased their budget, and yourself, Mr. Chairman, through our budget process. And so I agree that we need to bring them to the table, as we've done other entities or organizations, to really get a better understanding about what more do they need and things that we can do to intercede to support them with other organizations across the city. So please let me know when you, Mr. Chair, and Councilman Starr, your Vice Chair, will be doing that work, and so I'm happy to be engaged with you all on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Harrison. Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner, I don't know why, but it's really irking me, the way this legislation is coming to us in 3 different pieces. Why did you put the cart before the horse? You're coming to us today with the land swap, which should have happened probably back in 2022 when you secured the bonds. So now you've done all this work, you've secured this money, and what happens if we would say no to the land swap?
Through the chair to Councilman Casey, so CMSD took on the obligation of demolishing the existing facilities at the former JFK site on Harvard Avenue. It took longer than expected, and so we didn't want to swap that property, have that property come into the city's possession prior to that work being completed, which it recently was.
But then, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner, but you went out in 2022 and secured the bonds for it, though. So you went out and secured the money in 2022 for a project that, how long were we going to hang on to this bond obligation, right? What if the demolition of that building wouldn't have happened until 2030 or 31? And then you'd be coming to us saying 9 years ago we secured the bond money. So this is just one of the aggravating things with a piece of legislation where it's got 3 pieces in one, right? Before you even went out to get dollars for bonds, we should have done the land swap, just like we do in every other situation, right? Because we know that with land swaps, there's a 2 or 3 step process in all this, which is another reason that I don't think that this is a good piece of legislation, because it's so much is tied into one, and it just you know how I feel about it, Mr. Chairman. You don't need to respond. It's just, that's just my thoughts and my opinion, but if you want to, you can, but this should have been done a long time ago.
Through the chairman, Councilman, I won't get into details, but let me just say that it's been very challenging to move this into action, into this piece of legislation. Not only has CMSD had the obvious budget constraints that you all have seen in the newspaper, but for many reasons, the demolition of the property was delayed. We actually did go through council many years ago for an option on the property, and the demolition was delayed for so long that that option expired. So we did do that initially, and now we're coming back in a different way to acquire the land after we had already, secured a handshake deal that, yes, we can put it out to RFP. And luckily, we did find a great developer, and it is going to be a great site for development on the southeast side. But it's taken a lot of time to get to this point. So I do understand your frustration, but I think that this really is in the best interest of our residents, and we're happy to bring it to council today.
All right, Councilman Casey. All right, you good?
No,
All right.
I'm good, but I'm okay.
Okay, so Director, did we already borrow funds for this stadium?
Through the chairman, yes. In 2022, that's when the bonds were sold, yes.
So we paying interest on those bonds that we sold in 2022? We're paying interest already? We hadn't even passed the legislation? Mr.
Chairman, that's correct. And CMSD either has or is about to go to their board and about to go under construction so that this stadium will be completed for this year's football season. So no more waiting. CMSD is ready to go. We have to get through our process first, though.
Okay. Director, have you consulted the council president with this piece of legislation?
Through the chairman, Councilman, I have not consulted him recently on this, no.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions on ordinance number 246, 2025? All right. So I am going to move this piece of legislation forward. It's kind of clear that certain members are not happy. I don't think the council president knew anything about this $2.1 million to put up, the city's going to put up for the JFK Stadium. But I am going to move it forward, and we will see it in finance. Okay? All right. Is there any other questions? Seeing no further questions, ordinance 246, 2025 is approved.
Thank you.
As amended. Oh, yeah, it's going to go to DPS. I'm sorry.
Yep.
All right, is there any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, ordinance number 244, 2025. Ordinance number 244, 2025 by council members Bishop and Griffin. This is a departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance into an amendment to contract number CT 0114 PS 2023-42 with Murtis Taylor Human Services Systems to provide social support services. All right, who's here to speak to this piece? Chief?
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you for having us. Good morning, council members. We are here asking for an amendment to this contract with Murtis Taylor that's allowed us to provide crisis support and mental health services across all neighborhoods since 2023. With us today, we are, in addition to the PIO team, we have the president and CEO of Murtis Taylor, Mr. Lavelle Custard, who's available to assist with answering questions. And I just wanted to highlight a few important things about about this particular contract. Since 2023, Murtis Taylor has provided additional support beyond the work of our social support specialists working in partnership with them, but particularly across neighborhoods when a significant crisis has occurred. We found as we were doing our work that a number of crises were coming up across neighborhoods, particularly after someone had been shot or killed in a neighborhood, and a number of the current systems that were in place were not as user-friendly as we needed them to be for our residents. And so we started engaging with Murtis Taylor at that time. The other thing I would say is their highest areas of support have been in zip codes 44120, 105, and 102. And we're particularly interested in maintaining the safety net for residents during this time where we're seeing entitlements and federal funding being cut across human services. So thank you for your consideration.
All right, so Chief, the original ordinance that's being amended. So this is basically a contract that we signed in 2020. What? Which one?
I'll let Sherry give you those particulars.
This contract started in February of 2023, and we're asking that we have an amendment to allow us to continue this work.
So you're asking for amendment to continue the piece. So you didn't have an option to renew? There was no option to renew in that?
Yes, to the chairman, yes, we did have an option to renew. We exercised that option to renew. And so we're asking again for authorization to have another option to renew, two additional options to renew.
So what was the original price tag for this piece of legislation? Do you have that? We don't have that. We don't have any information.
$230,303 was the original, the first year of the contract. The renewal was $230,303. And we're asking for that same amount for a renewal in this amendment. Now that, I do want to point out that they leverage other funds. This is probably close to $1.7 million project, but Murtis Taylor has leveraged other funds, and I can turn it over to Lavelle Kester to explain that part of it, if you'd like.
Okay.
Sure. Mr. Chair, we utilize a variety of services depending.
Can you cut your mic on? It's till it turns green.
Mr. Chair, we utilize a variety of services depending on the needs that the individuals that we work with identify. So in some cases, the services are mental health services. In other cases, the services might be food, shelter. And so we have contracts with the County Adams Board. We have Medicaid contracts. We're able to provide services through Western Reserve, the County Fatherhood Program, Ohio Commission of Minority Health, and we also utilize general operating funds in order to cover costs as necessary. In some cases, the program for a given week or a month, the cost may be pretty stable, but then there might be a crisis, there might be a need to rapidly respond and to send a psychiatrist to involve licensed therapists in a more concentrated way at whatever that issue is that could increase the need for services over a prolonged period of time. So we could actually have a team of 10 people working on 5 days to deal with a situation where there's an unfortunate trauma.
Okay. So there is no way for us to kind of gauge the deliverables that we of the last contract.
To the chair, we provided this committee and you with a breakdown of all of the impact thus far. Sherry also has copies, so you can definitely see the deliverables.
Okay, so
Do you have it on your, oh, okay. Okay,
But if you like paper.
where is it? Okay. 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 All right. Okay. All right. Okay, we have.
thanks.
All right. All right, I'm going to open this up for questions. Is there any questions on ordinance 244?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman,
So, and
Oh,
maybe I
go
missed
ahead.
this, so did we receive any information about those who've been served, number of people? We have that?
Through the chair to the councilman, yes, it's in the report.
it's on the tablet, Councilman.
Okay.
You see it?
It's not showing for me now, but let me.
Would you like a hard copy?
It's under,
That's fine. Which one is this?
you know, this, I didn't see it this morning either. I don't know if it was just loaded on here just a minute ago.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I can get a copy of this. Maybe the tablet just isn't working like it should. Okay. All right, I just was wondering because I'm interested in who we served, how many people. I see we got some zip code information. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councilman Brian Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the chief or whomever wants to answer. First of all, Meredith Taylor does yeoman's work, right? I mean, I know the facility very well. Nobody's ever going to be able to argue about the services that Meredith Taylor provide. But, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, are you the one that's bringing this forward for us? Because we're authorizing the director of finance. Nobody from finance is here. But at what point I don't want to use the term, but this is a sloppy piece of legislation, right? I mean, at what point are you going to keep coming back year after year after year asking for an amendment for an old piece of legislation? Or will you at some point, maybe after this one's done, get yourself into a 5-year with 2 years to, 2 options to renew or whatever? I mean, we know is this the second time this has come by
So
to amend the original piece?
through
Or
the
is the
chair
first one?
to Councilman Casey, we have been following the format provided. We work with the law department and make sure that we take advantage of the renewals as they are available by contract. But I will have Sherry answer your specific question.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Yes, so this particular ordinance, we have never come before you and asked for
An amendment to.
an amendment to the
Right.
ordinance. This is our first time.
Okay.
And we are asking for a renewal for this year and an option to have an additional renewal. And quite frankly, we're watching what our federal government is doing and what services our residents are going to need. And, if we decide after these next 2 years, if this is approved by City Council, if we decide this is something that we will need going forward, we'll put out another RFP and have them go through that process and come back to you with that proposal for a brand-new contract.
So, right. So, Mr. Chairman, to the chief, was the original piece of legislation a 1-year?
It was through the chair to the councilman. It was 1 year with one option to renew.
Okay. And then this, your current contract ended through the chair to, Sherry, I don't know what your title is. I just know you're Sherry, Assistant Director. So the contract ended in February, correct? Of
February 28th.
2028.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, to Meredith Taylor, are you guys still providing the services even though your contract expired in February?
We're not providing the services exactly as proposed in the proposal, but we have been utilizing our, Mr. Chair, to the council member, we are utilizing our matching resources, our leverage resources to deliver most of the services. So we've been delivering as much of it we can with the funding that we have.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I forget, I'll just call you Meredith Taylor, you're here representing them. Did you stop then in February because your contract expired?
Certain services were ended in February when the contract expired, but we continue to deploy our leverage services.
So, Mr. Chairman, what is your name?
Lavelle Custard.
Mr. Custard, what services did you stop in February when the contract ended?
Mr. Chair, to the council member, we reduced the number of staff working on the project.
So, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Custard, you didn't stop the programming, you let staff go. Are you going to bring them back once this contract is renewed?
Mr. Chair, to the council member, we essentially reassigned those staff to other services that were funded.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the Assistant Director, is our contract going for, because we've always had this conversation at this table, for providing staff to Murtis Taylor and not for programming?
Through the chair to the councilman, I'm not clear on what your question is.
So the question is, Mr. Chairman, to the Assistant Director, are the dollars, the $230,303 that we're providing, which is going to be a problem because we've often said that our dollars shouldn't go toward staff, right? Because when those dollars end, we see an example of people losing their jobs, right? And we don't want to be in that situation. So we know that in February, programming that we were paying for ceased to exist because the contract wasn't renewed. And Mr. Chairman, to the director, the assistant director, the chief, we can go over that, because if that's the case, then this piece of legislation should have came to us long before February for renewal. That's on your guys' side of the table, because we don't want to get into the situation where people are being laid off because we're not renewing contracts, which is another reason why, if this is a good program and if it's a good fit, we should look at doing something like a 3 and a 2, or as opposed to coming back and not after February, to make sure that those services aren't lost to the people that we're serving.
Through the council chair to Councilman Casey, you said a couple of things there, so I'll try to address a few. First and foremost, in terms of scheduling, we work as fast as we can in partnership with our team on the administrative side as well as with council in order to get scheduled. And so sometimes, unfortunately, the scheduling plays out the way that it does based on calendars. As far as people being laid off, Mr. Custer did let you know that people were not laid off, so no one has been laid off.
Reassigned.
But when we think about the kinds of services, supportive services and mental health services, come through a person. And so those services are being provided, and we are focusing on making sure that we can extend those kinds of crisis and mental health support services beyond what our staff members have the credentials to do. And so that's really the crux of this contract.
And I get that, and I'll end it with this, right? In regards to keeping an eye on your contracts, if this contract had ended February 28th. It wasn't introduced until February 24th. The director of finance didn't sign off on it until February 27th. And the director of law didn't sign off on it until February 28th. So it would behoove somebody in the administration, in law, wherever, whomever, to keep a closer eye on contracts like this so that they don't expire, and that we can just continue on with whether it's employees or services or whatever. But if a contract ends in February, we shouldn't be introducing it at the end of February in hopes that we can rush it through. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Councilman Case. I'm going to go to Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Just my question through the chair to Mr. Director Cluster, right? Or is it Custer? Spell it.
C-U-S-T-A-R-D.
All right, Custard, okay. I know that you have a facility location in Ward 5, right off of East 30th and Project Ave. Do you operate through that department, through that building? Do you have any services being operated out of that building through the chair?
Mr. Chair, to the council member, at this time, no, that building actually is being rehabbed.
Rehab, yes. So some of the rehab work I definitely wanted to bring to your attention is the outside of the building, the gate is all like accidents that happen on the gate and no repairs has been done. Sometimes the grass overgrows sometimes and not get cut. So after this meeting, I definitely would like to connect with you so I can have your contact information, just so we can make sure that it's looking good. And when you say renovations, are you still going to be owning the building and renovating it to upgrade it through the chair?
Mr. Chair, to council member, Currently, right now, the building is used on an appointment-by-appointment basis. We are doing some changes and modifications to the inside of the building. We have worked in collaboration with the county for the potential of using that building for another purpose. Would at some point in the future, there are no firm plans, but the building may actually change hands.
All right, thank you. And through the chair to Assistant Director, with this ordinance that I think Councilman Casey brought up some good points with 244. When I look at the actual data, when you see in the data, I see there's about 2,231 actual resident referred for services. Could you explain what the referred for services process looks like or what it actually is through the chair?
Sure, Mr. Chair, to the council member, essentially our workers, specialists, whether they're therapists or qualified mental health specialists, case managers, are deployed on a rotational basis to the various recreation centers. We also leave materials in order for individuals to access the services while at times when there's not a worker at that specific facility. Oftentimes, because we're dealing with trauma-informed work, there might be an individual, child, or an adult who is dealing with a traumatic issue and does not want to receive a service right there at the facility. And so instead, they may call later, contact somebody at the facility, and we would actually send someone to the home. They meet at our offices. Oftentimes, we'll identify that the issue is connected to the school system, so we will connect with the school system. In some cases, it's our people going into the schools. In other cases, it's us linking with other service providers who have an existing relationship with those schools. So the best way to think about it is we're transitioning the recreation centers to trauma-informed neighborhood recreation centers such that the access, sort of an anchor, is available to whoever needs that service at a particular recreation center. We would love to do this at all recreation centers, all day when they're open, but given limited resources, it's done on a rotational basis.
And through that, thank you for that explanation. And through that limited resources, or through that actual program, as far as a rotation, so you have how many total staff is operating out of this budget through this certain kind of amount of dollars?
There's close to 10 individuals who work specifically on the project. They're not all full-time employees. They're full-time employees with us, but they're not full-time on this particular project. It depends. So we have staff stationed at the recreation centers from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock on that rotational basis. So it really depends on the day, the nature of the service. At any given day, say for instance, a good way of looking at this might be an individual is engaged at 6 o'clock on Tuesday night, and then a therapist is actually at their home the next day or at their home after school. Oftentimes, because of the nature of traumas, whether it's abuse and neglect, individuals don't want to receive that service in a place that they are familiar with. I think another point, Mr. Chair, to the council member that's important, sometimes zip codes can be misleading. So for instance, the zip codes are essentially where a person lives who has accessed that service. But youth and adults access recreation centers in various neighborhoods. And so there are many individuals who live, say for instance, close to the Union Miles area who may actually go to Zelma George because it has a different set of facilities, different activities, and different sets of friends. And so while we may have a high number in 44120, it doesn't mean that those individuals living in 44120 access the services in, say, Alexander Hamilton.
Yep, so it's really a direct services to connect them. And then through your program, when you do referrals, is it a warm handoff, or do we have any tracking mechanism to see if they actually receive the services? Meaning, I might have met you at my school, or I might have met you at the neighborhood recreational center. And from there, I may need this type of help, and the family support, or not support, what is they, the grief and trauma support specialist will then possibly refer me to this agency. After they get referred to that agency, do the staff that referred them do any initial follow-up to see if the services were met with that individual or that family?
So the vast majority of the services that are referenced in our report are actually in-house services. So Murders Taylor is a nationally accredited organization that provides a variety of services. So that it's a very warm handoff. It might even be considered a hot handoff in the sense that the workers there at the recreation center, they make the referral, or the individual calls later. They're calling into our helpline, so they're getting into our system. Because of HIPAA requirements and the need for confidentiality, we don't publish actual names of individuals, but we have the names and demographics of individuals, and that allows us to tell you how old they are. That allows us to tell you what zip codes they live in, and so forth, as well as in the materials that were presented, that gives you a sense of what services that were actually provided. Oftentimes, individuals don't come for a single service. So an individual who initially enters the system may enter the system because of food, clothing. They're interested in a giveaway, some type of fair that we have, and then once they're into the system, they then may access the mental health services or some of the other services, housing.
All right, and then my other question would be, in addition, these are separate individuals than the family support specialists that we already have. So do they work social support? Yeah, we're not CMSD. We ain't say yes. Okay, social support specialists. Man, there's so many specialists. So with the social support specialists that we have at vast majority of, well, we have one at every one of our 22 locations. So your 10 rotating staff basically will get a call from them about certain issues, and between the hours of 4 to 7, they will be able to come and assist someone. And if they need to work outside them hours, they possibly can link with them because they may feel comfortable through the chair that way.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Council Member, slightly different than how you described it. So, if you think of the cohort of staff that work on the project, some individuals actually focus on responding to receiving the referral, and they'll go directly to the home. And so we have a specific group or subgroup within that group that actually rotates through, and these are the trauma-informed trained screeners that will address, assist, and connect the individuals who say are working during the day or who are able to be deployed for a specific need. And in some cases, they actually will go to our facilities or be referred to our facilities for, say, access to clothing, food, shelter, that type of thing.
Thank you. And through the chair, could you possibly have the department or Murders Taylor to send over some stuff for us? I would like to share this type of services that is being provided in the area, and then I possibly will need to work with Chief or the team to get ideal of what recreation centers or neighborhood resource recreation centers to be able to make sure people know when these services are taking place, the hours, so I can have those in our newsletters, social media, email blasts, just in case someone sees that and say, hey, I need to stop up there, because what they do not know, can't expect them to know if we all don't work as a collective to make sure we get this information out.
Through the chair to Councilman Starr, we do have flyers that we will be sending to you once this has been approved, and we also have a schedule, tentative right now, in terms of which sites that they will be reporting to between 4 and 7, and we'll be sending that to you as well as soon as the ordinance is approved.
And through that point, definitely within this collaboration, I do see the flyers, and it has the City of Cleveland logo on there. I would wish that we have Cleveland City Council logo added on there as well, so that they know that this is a collective. This is not about one branch of government. We all work together to be able to provide the services. Prime example, we're here talking about the dollar amount to be able to be amended and approved to be able to have the services. So definitely would like to request to the chair that we add City Council logo on there so we can get that word out too.
Through the chair to the councilman, absolutely, we will add that logo.
Thank you. I yield, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Starr. Councilwoman Deborah Gray?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, the questions that my colleagues asked was terrific. I don't want to be redundant, but I just want to say this. Mr. Cluster and I have meetings consistently at Myrtis Taylor. So when I came council person, he immediately brought me into the center and introduced me to all his social services representative, and we had a great, robust conversation. I didn't get to all the representatives because we had so much conversation in the beginning just to get the introduction out of the way. But I have been there several times to tour the building and consistently have meetings with Mr. Custer, as well as Mr. Custer give outdoor presentations on different mental health issues. He does that at least once a year, and I know my colleague, Council Conwell, and his wife, Yvonne, have been at a couple of those outdoor presentations. A lot of them as well, before I came council. But he's very engaging. He does have an open door policy. So just to say the least, that I have learned so much just by sitting, having a conversation with Mr. Cluster on what Myrtis Taylor offered prior to PIO coming in with this social program, to work in the center. So my question, Chair, to Mr. Cluster and the PIO team, just to clarify, I know, and I think my colleague Starr asking all those great questions, but to separate what Myrtis Taylor's already been doing way before I came council, and knowing what they have done, in addition that my sister, my daughter-in-law, worked there at Myrtis Taylor at one time, so that's how I know more of the information, that they do there as well. But say the least, separate from what you already do at Myrtis Taylor, for all the other residents need. The service PI came in on separate from what you're doing. Could you say how many residents have already used the service of PIO versus what you have in here in the chart? Chair
Through the chair to Councilwoman, I just want to make sure we understand your question. Is your question above and beyond the 2,000 people that Myrtis Taylor has served by this contract? What else Myrtis Taylor is doing, or who else our social support service specialists are serving?
No, I'm asking the question on the program that you brought into Myrtis Taylor, this program?
Yes.
Is that separate from what Myrtis Taylor have already been serving of the residents' need, per se, and the money that you're asking to be renewal, that's separate from what Myrtis Taylor have already been doing? Is that correct, Chair, to the Chief?
Through the chair to Councilwoman, I would say yes. And what we didn't do that may have been helpful, the origin story behind why we started this work with Myrtis Taylor. And so we were seeing in our work in PIO, we have our social support specialists. Most of them are either social workers or youth development professionals. We were seeing gaps, right, with how much they could do to support a resident with all of their mental health or crisis needs versus what Myrtis Taylor could provide with their additional credentials amongst their staff. So one of the new features of this program allowed us to fill those kinds of service gaps.
Okay.
The other was about coordination in the neighborhood when crisis occurred. There was a shooting that occurred, and a family was really having some significant challenges, and one of the council members reached out because the neighborhood was also significantly challenged.
I recall that.
And what we found in our research was that some of the services provided across the county were only available to people if they requested the services in a very specific way. And what we have been learning from a trauma-informed care lens was people are not likely to request a service in that way. So what could we do to bring the service to the community? And because of the great track record that you mentioned with Murtis Taylor, and we reached out to them on several occasions before we ever had a contract and said, Murtis Taylor, we understand you do this type of work. Can you engage in the neighborhoods? And we were seeing it was a continuing pattern. And we saw it as a gap and a need, which is why we engaged in this contract.
Yes, and I appreciate that too, because we had that conversation. I appreciate the work that you have partnered up with Murtis Taylor. But going back to my question to the chair, to Mr. Custer, or to you, Chief, prior to what they already been serving, do you have the data of how many people partner up with this additional program since you brought it into Murtis Taylor? Is that data incorporated with this data, or that data is separate?
And so the data that
Chair
you have,
to the chief.
through the chair to Councilwoman Gray, the data that you have in front of you, that 2,000 plus residents that have been served, are specifically for this program.
Okay, all right, good. And any additional comments?
Sure, Mr. Chair, council member. So one way to look at it is we talked about the $1.4 million of leverage funding that we have. You can think of the 2,000 individuals as individuals who have access services and care through the recreation centers through some way.
Yeah.
So, and so through this specific program. But once they get into this program, there's continuing ongoing services. So that individual may receive or need other services that are provided by other programs. So the way to think of the 2,500 individual or 2,300 individuals that are served by this program, we've integrated their services to add additional services from other sources. So those other sources would see, the fact that they have delivered those services to them as well. But these 2,023 individuals would not have received these services necessarily, at least not through the recreation centers, if this program didn't exist.
Yes, and I agree with that. So I'm not denying that. I just wanted to have specifics per se due to the collaboration of what both of the organizations have done. So due to the fact that I am the council of that area, I just didn't have specific because we know what's going on in the community, and I have met a lot of the clients throughout Mount Pleasant neighborhood because they have called my office, and I have called you for them to call you because that's your expertise. That's not my expertise as a council, so I understand the collaboration because that's a big part that we all have to pay regardless what position that we're in. We're here to help each other. So I'm just saying it's a wonderful program. I know it's working. So I don't really have anything else to add because the colleagues had already had their questions, which I echoed those. But I just wanted to have that specific of the additional work that has been served at Murtis Taylor to let you know that Murtis Taylor is doing a great job. And I do have visitations also with Miss Harriet. We have conversations and have meetings with her too as well. So a job well done. Okay.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Gray. I just want to remind that we still have the presentation by Parks and Recs, and we do have a meeting, caucus. I'm going to go to Councilman Conway.
Skip me on that. I'll meet with the chief later when you finish.
Okay.
We
All
have
right.
time constraints.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any other questions on ordinance 244, 2025? Seeing no further questions, ordinance 244, 2025 is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, can we have our Parks and Rec?
Hey,
Chief,
Chairman.
I'll talk to you later. Why don't you blame me for this?
Hey, Councilman, Chairman. I know this is a really critical document for us, and I'm worried about the timing that we only have like half an hour before the caucus meeting. If I don't want to rush through everything. What do you think about if we could schedule additional time? There is really so much content here to discuss.
I mean, we can't, we gotta cover what we can cover. If you gotta leave out, I understand. All right, Director?
Thanks, everybody, for having us here today. We do have a PowerPoint presentation, and I do appreciate Councilwoman Moore's comment. We are absolutely happy to come back anytime to continue this conversation. We have been working on this plan for the last 1.5 to 2 years, and so we provided all the council members with the executive summary. We put a couple of copies in your box. The latest one was this bound copy. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to go through. We had a great consultant team that led this with city staff and with stakeholders from the community. And so with us today, we have Andrew is on with Olin, who is our lead consultant. And Andrew, I'm going to hand it off to you for the PowerPoint presentation, and then Director Nichols and Jay Rauschenbach is our planner for Parks and Rec in the Office of Capital Projects, and we'll be here to answer any detailed questions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew. Off to you.
Thanks so much. Very excited to be here today. It's been a while since we were able to meet with you. And also just really excited because the last time we met with you, there was not a Parks and Recreation department. So starting to see some of the excitement of trying to move Parks and Recreation forward in Cleveland already in the works. So today I'm going to briefly walk you through the plan. And what is included in the plan includes context that talks about the value of Parks and Recreation, and some trends that we've been seeing in recreation. It talks about the Parks and Recreation in Cleveland today, goes through community needs that we gathered through this process, has a set of guidelines that cover design guidelines, classifications, programs, investment strategies, and funding. There is a policy framework that includes the goals of the plan, and then an implementation section. So just starting at a very high level, the vision for Parks and Recreation is that Cleveland's dynamic and equitable network of parks and recreational facilities enhances quality of life and the natural environment, preserves and stewards the city's rich cultural identities, and evolves with the needs of current and future generations of Clevelanders. And as Director DeRosa said, we've been working on this plan for quite a while now. Started in the spring of 2023, went through a community needs assessment, developed the long-range Parks and Recreation plan, and then developed a strategic plan for implementation. Really central to the development of this plan was community engagement. And I believe that we went through some of this last time we were with you, but we had over 250 open house attendees at open houses across the city. We attended pop-up events, held youth workshops specifically to get the input from some of the biggest users of parks, which are our youth. We worked with Neighborhood Connections and some of your offices to distribute neighborhood meeting kits and provided grants to some neighborhood groups to be able to host their own meetings. We conducted a statistically valid survey that got over 500 responses. We had an online survey that had the same questions as the statistically valid survey, and our open houses for people who couldn't attend the open houses in person. And we also had a number of stakeholder interviews with city and community groups. I also wanted to mention that equity was a really central component of this plan to make sure that the city is having just and fair capital investment in parks and recreation, to make sure there's equitable connections to quality parks and recreation, and to make sure that this plan is meeting the needs of current and future residents. And equity shows up across the plan. It shows up in the level of service standards, indicating where amenities are needed and what amenities are needed and where. It shows up in the general investment strategies that identifies parts of the city that need more equitable access. It also shows up in the prioritization strategy, which indicates which parks should be invested first. And it shows up in the policy framework that details the actions that the city should take to more equitably achieve its goals. And so just as a mapping tool for equity, we use the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which measures burden across 8 categories, including climate change, energy, housing, pollution, water, and wastewater. In terms of design guidelines, the plan provides these to give a roadmap for designing new parks and recreation facilities, and also for refreshing existing ones. So it talks about the design, context, connectivity, wayfinding, and different zones of use within each of the parks by park classification. The plan also introduces level of service standards, which help guide decisions about how many amenities are needed and where. And those are broken down into population-based standards, which really talk about how many of each amenity does Cleveland have and how many should the city have. And then access-based standards, which are how close residents should be to different types of park amenities. The plan also introduces a set of park classifications. There are clear expectations by the public about what types of amenities, what is the typical length of visit, what design principles apply, what types of parking should they expect at a community park versus a neighborhood park versus a mini park. Prior to the development of this plan, the way that the city prioritized what should be invested in was what was called the worst to first strategy, which really just looked at the physical condition of each site, and the sites that were in the worst condition were the first to be prioritized for investment. But as we went through this plan, we realized that does not take into account all of the factors that should be considered when deciding where to invest first. So instead of the worst to first strategy, there are a number of criteria that we're using to decide where to prioritize investment. Some of those are based on the park and recreation plan itself, those priorities. We're also taking into account equity considerations and then alignment with other city priorities. So within the park and recreation plan priorities, we're looking at what type of classification the park is. Does it align with other investments in recreation centers? Is it generally in a part of the city that needs more facilities? In terms of equity, using that climate and economic justice screening tool to look at what parts of the city are most burdened, and also where has investment happened since 2011 or not happened since 2011. And then in terms of alignment with other city priorities, taking a look at crime, the 15-minute city, and the Southeast Side Promise. All of this comes together in terms of using a data-based methodology for ranking to identify which parks should be invested in first. In addition to identifying new park classifications, the plan also identifies new rec center and special facility classifications. So explaining what, again, the length of stay, the types of numbers of staff that should be at regional, community, neighborhood recreation centers. And then moving on to the policy framework, these are really the written goals of the plan, and they fall into 4 categories: responsible stewardship of the system, providing engaging experiences, creating accessible facilities, and creating enhanced spaces. So within responsible stewardship, there is a goal around ensuring that parks and recreation facilities are operated and maintained effectively, and to define standards. Obviously, a huge issue is funding, so enhancing the fiscal sustainability of Cleveland's parks and recreation facilities, and strengthening, building and strengthening partnerships for mutual benefit. In terms of accessible facilities, there is a goal to ensure equitable access to quality parks and recreation facilities, improving users' ability to quickly find parks and recreation facilities and programs, and of course, safety is of the utmost importance, continuing to ensure safety and security. In terms of engaging experiences, making sure that the city is providing equitable access to quality recreational experiences, and ensuring that staff capabilities match the needs. And then finally, in terms of enhanced spaces, elevating the design of park facilities, better leveraging recreation facility resources to enhance the delivery of recreation programming, and then protecting and enhancing natural, historic, and cultural resources in parks and at recreation facilities. I mentioned the importance of funding. As part of this process, we benchmarked the city of Cleveland's spending on parks and recreation against a number of peer cities nationally. And based on those best practices, saw a need to increase funding for parks and recreation. And not just the total number, but actually redistributing the operating expenses, amongst parks, recreation, as compared to capital. Within the plan, as part of the strategic plan for implementation, we detail out a number of funding and revenue strategies and have put them on these in this chart to explain which ones are the most feasible and which ones have the highest revenue generation potential. And we've really focused on what we're calling the primary funding sources, which are the ones that have the highest degree of feasibility and the highest revenue generation potential. I wanted to specifically mention the idea of a Cleveland Parks and Recreation levy, which, as you know, a levy would be a real estate tax, and that we're suggesting would be dedicated to parks and recreation that is separate from the general fund. The thing about a separate Parks and Recreation levy would be that it would be able to fund not just capital projects, but also operations and maintenance. This would have to be established by voter referendum. And just to point out, again, I'm sure you all already know this, but that Cleveland Metro Parks receives a lot of its funding from a levy, and so there is precedent. The reason for mentioning this is that with all of the funding sources that I mentioned on the previous slide, they should all be taken in concert, but a levy is really the only potential funding source that can match the magnitude of the investment that's needed in the system. So this plan was completed in December. Really, how to get there with a Parks and Recreation levy would be to spend the next year standing up the Parks and Recreation Department, making sure that the staff and budget are all reconciled, then using the next couple of years to demonstrate the effectiveness of the department to improve the level of service and meet customer service expectations, and then planning for a campaign for the levy to make the case based on the improved performance over the next couple of years for that levy, with the idea of potentially putting this to the voters in November of 2028. Among the policy recommendations, there are some priority actions that I just wanted to call out. They were flagged on the previous slides, but in summary, securing funding, as I mentioned, cultivating long-term relationships, making sure that parks and recreation are accessible universally, developing a communications and marketing plan to increase awareness, supporting a visible community presence, striving for design excellence, using this plan's new level of service standards, and integrating natural resources and natural resource interpretation. So I know that there are some printouts for you. I hope that you've gotten a chance to flip through this. And that's my quick summary and overview of the Parks and Recreation Plan. Thanks so much.
And Andrew, if you could pull out a list of who your consultants are, because I did want to reference who your team was. And in the meantime, I also wanted to mention that our internal team included conversations with every single council person. Internally, we involved many directors and chiefs in our equity discussions. Obviously, a lot of time from MOCAP and the Department of Public Works, now the Department of Parks and Recreation, city planning, sustainability, PIO, CMSD, the Metro Parks, and we had a really good partnership with the Trust for Public Land, and this tied into their 10-minute walking campaign to try to get residents within a 10-minute walk of a quality park. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Andrew. If you could just name some of your local and national consultants that worked with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We worked really closely with Pros Consulting on the recreation analysis, the rec center analysis and funding. Design Explorer, who's local to Cleveland, on youth engagement. OHM Advisors, also local to Cleveland, on our design guidelines. Rhonda Crowder and Associates, who did PR for us locally and helped us with our open houses. Third Space Action Lab in terms of racial equity. IG Global Solutions helped us with translation and interpretation at our meetings. Neighborhood Connections, we worked with on those, providing those mini grants to neighborhood groups to host their own meetings. We had ETC Institute do the statistically valid survey, and Footprinting just as our local partner for printing materials.
Thank you. And Council, I did want to reference that this is our first presentation of the plan to City Council here. After this presentation, the Park and Rec Master Plan will go up on our website. The actual approval of the plan goes through the City Planning Commission. So this is a presentation to City Council today, but the way that master plans work is that they're adopted by City Planning Commission, and that would happen in early May. So we wanted this to be the first presentation of the plan publicly. So with that, we are aware of the time constraints, but Director Nichols, myself, and Jay Rauschenbach, and obviously Andrew are here to answer as many questions as you have.
All right, thank you, Director, and thank you for Andrew for his presentation from Philadelphia. I really appreciate it. He was very thorough in his evaluation. So I guess the thing that jumps out right away is that the parks campaign for a levy. Now, you say this master plan has to be adopted by the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And so who makes the final call as far as if you're going to go out for a levy or some kind of tax for this thing? Is that who makes that call, Director? Can you walk us through that?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, let me highlight that this is a plan that can move us forward in the right direction for our Park and Rec facilities. But any actions related to funding, levies, anything that's outside of something that we currently do, even that, budgets still need approved by City Council. So all of that would still come through City Council for approval. What City Planning would approve is that they think that we did a good job of doing a needs assessment with the community, that we had good community outreach, and that we had a good team to put together a plan for us to move forward. Our next steps, including a decision about the levy, is really to analyze the master plan and determine what next steps make the most sense to us. And also a lot more community engagement. So we did community engagement on what the needs of the community are, but there's going to be a lot of community engagement needed about implementing this plan. So to specifically answer your question, a move towards a levy as Andrew pointed out, wouldn't be for several years in the future. Typically, it's planned for the year of a major election, so typically the next presidential election. And in the meantime, there's a lot of work that our new Park and Rec department needs to do to prove that if they had this additional funding, that they would effectively use that money to better our system.
Okay. All right, I want to just get that out of the way because I know that's something that's jumped out to everybody. So I'm going to open it up to questions from my colleagues. I'm going to go to Councilman Anthony Harrison. I'm going to come back to Kevin Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you definitely caught me off guard with this levy. You know, I look at all the things that we ask from the federal government, from our state government, our county government, and, you know, and I look at what we've asked for versus now we've been asked, or the potential to go out and ask to tax the people of City of Cleveland once again, which I just, at this moment, this time, I just don't think that that is the right thing to do. I think when we are making these big asks to the state to fund bridges and to fund other projects that, you know, folks want to see in the City of Cleveland, then we should be also asking for our neighborhoods. I know this body consistently is in a battle, you know, because we very much want to support our neighborhoods in any way that we can, right? And this is a for sure way to support our neighborhoods. And I just think we need to get our priorities together when lobbying for dollars for projects here in the City of Cleveland. So that's first and foremost. So I'm sure there'll be more discussion around this potential park levy that has been introduced today. The Metro Parks receives millions of dollars through, you know, a taxpayer-funded levy that happens every. How often is that happening? I don't recall, but nonetheless, they receive dollars through a vote by the people throughout the county. I believe that maybe we should craft an amendment that we take some of those dollars that the Metro Parks receive and put them into, you know, parks within the City of Cleveland. I mean, that's an idea. I mean, instead of trying to go out and ask for a new tax, I think that this warrants, you know, a larger discussion and not something that, you know, I hope that the administration nor the council would just jump right into trying to put this on the ballot, you know, and add another burden on top of the many burdens that the people of the City of Cleveland already experience. And so, again, that's first and foremost. And secondly, Mr. Chair, can you give us a list of all of the engagement sessions that has occurred around the City of Cleveland? I know that the consultant has mentioned, and also the presentation that shows a lot of the engagement sessions and the amount of people that they interacted with. Can you get us a list of every engagement session that has been held by the consultant throughout the neighborhoods, and in what areas of the city were those engagement sessions held? And in fact, you can actually make a little map like you did with the pins on them, and it kind of shows you where the meetings were held across the City of Cleveland. I'd like to see that on a map as well, okay? I don't recall any South Collinwood sessions, and maybe there were. I don't recall any South. I know I personally had a discussion with the department about the Parks and Recs plan, but I don't recall any South Collinwood discussions. As you know, Coit Road Park, I've been talking about Coit Road Park since I got here. Coit Road Park is a mess. It is in a very, very, very horrible condition, and it has been for quite some time now. And if Coit Road Park is not on the top of the list to renovate, then we have a problem. You know, I see, and I've heard discussions about other potential parks and playground locations across the City of Cleveland that has had some level investments, you know, over the last number of years. But Coit Road has seen nothing. Only thing that Coit Road has seen has been the painting of the wall around the basketball court that had graffiti by volunteers in the Collinwood neighborhood, along with myself, right? The trimming of trees that were hanging over the basketball hoops that we cut down, right? That we could never get done. The painting of the trash cans that were graffiti, they were just filthy, that we did, right? And so I'm hoping that, you know, through this plan and what we see today, that Coit Road Park is on the top of that list, because it is in very deplorable conditions. And we wonder why we can't get young people to attend some of these or go and utilize some of these parks and playgrounds, is because of the conditions. I see your document that shows what individuals has said has been the main issues. Obviously, safety is an issue, you know, but the upkeep, right? You know what? You know the condition of these parks and playgrounds, right? And I'm speaking from what I hear from my residents, who I represent, who sent me down here, from the adults to the children, right? Because they all are participants in many different things that we do across the neighborhoods, and I just hope that we get this right. When we roll this out, we start looking at what locations that we're going to begin with across the city of Cleveland in terms of you know, renovations and maintenance. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilman Harrison. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you very much. Echo Councilmember Anthony Harrison, you know, looking at the background history, and you know, you weren't here, Director, I had to get some neighborhood people to rehab Glenville Recreation Center. My wife and I, County Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell, we spent money out of our own pockets to, we end up sneaking to do it because I request and request and request over and over again, Mr. Chair, for that recreation center to be rehabbed. So we went to Home Depot and we put down our own for the stairs. We got some liners and those kind of things ourselves, and we had Leon Stevenson, and he taught some young children how to make that happen, to clean the place up. We are in the meeting room, and people go into the exercise, the meeting room, to the chair, to the director. We painted. We got community people to paint ourselves, and we moved out the trash and the debris that was in there, and we, I mean, nobody knew we were doing it. We had to get it done because, you know, here's the thing to my colleagues. When the children, when they live in a community and they have to go to school just to get a meal or to go just to get a shower and to go to school, but here's the other thing, they go to the recreation centers also to escape abject poverty. And they escape it by going there, but when they see that, you gotta do preventive maintenance and you don't have it in your strategic plan. You gotta have that in there because they go there, take a shower so that they can go to a job interview or whatever the case may be. When you go into the, Mr. Chairman, when you go into the bathroom, not the bathroom, the restrooms of the male locker room as well as the female locker room, it's horrible conditions. It's horrible conditions. How can you go there to take a shower and you go for a job interview and it's what you're trying to escape? And you talk about putting a levy? You gotta hit some milestones. You have to hit some wins. They gotta know that you care about Glenville Recreation Center.
Absolutely.
Right. Saying that, I went to Case Western Reserve One-to-One Fitness to purchase. I didn't purchase. They donated, and the city don't even know where the equipment came from. I went there with Leon Stevenson. We ordered, Councilmember Anthony Harrison, some U-Haul trucks that we paid for ourselves. We moved the equipment into Glenville Recreation Center about 7 or 8 years ago. You see what I'm saying? And so we need some new ones. I'm gonna purchase some new ones over there. People have to see victories and wins. And here's the other thing. Before you look at closing Quarry Recreation Center, you have it on here, you gotta go in and talk with the residents. They're my bosses and they're your bosses also. Because if you don't do it right, guess what? It's 2 people they're gonna talk with. 2 people. Because they blame everything on me. They're gonna talk with Councilmember Kevin Conwell, and they're gonna reach out and talk with Mayor Bibb. You put in your boss, and your boss is gonna look around and say, how did I get that heat? Why didn't you go in there and have a meeting in the neighborhood. You could do it on the outside in front of the church and talk about, what your facility plans. You got to, because the residents, they're my bosses, they're your bosses, and they're Mayor Bibb's boss also. Mayor Bibb, sorry for saying the other way. Mayor Bibb boss. And I see this continuing Corey Recreation Center, and you're not talking with the residents? To the chair, to the director, you got to talk with them, because the decisions you make, not me, I didn't make those decisions. You guys made the decisions. But Chairman, who are they going to turn around and blame it on? Two people, me as well as Mayor Bibb, and we don't deserve that. So I think you should take it off your strategic plan, and you need to have conversations. That's your outer scope with the residents in the Glenville community.
So, Mr. Chairman, the councilman, these are recommendations, and absolutely, just like I said just 2 minutes ago, the next step is to analyze the recommendations and have more community engagement.
You got to have that.
We agree with you 100%. We would never choose to close anything until we have community engagement. We had a needs assessment where we understand what the community wants and where they want it and what types of facilities. But as far as next steps with taking action on here, absolutely community engagement. And with regard to preventative maintenance, this plan inside and out talks about how the residents complained about the condition of our facilities. So absolutely, that's something we need to do. And part of the reason why we need additional money coming in to do these improvements is that maintenance falls under the operating budget.
Right.
New things fall under the capital budget.
Right.
And while we're doing an okay job building new things, we can't just build a bunch of new things and think that the current budget can handle all of those ongoing maintenance costs, let alone all the deferred maintenance. So I hear you loud and clear, and it's written all over in this Park and Rec Master Plan exactly what you're saying.
But you know what? If I was doing a strategic plan, I wouldn't have put down, because I don't support it, closing, let me put that on the record, Corey Recreation Center. I would have reached out to the residents first. I mean, you have it in your plan right here. So it's like you already made your mind up. So when you go talk with them, the first thing they're going to say, you made your mind up already. You don't put it there. You go and you talk with them to see what direction or and you talk with your key stakeholders, which you don't have in your strategic plan, your key stakeholders that you need to talk with, and the residents are definitely your key stakeholders. And so right now, we will fight you on that, and you got to talk with them. Here's the other piece you have to have in here, because I'm adamant really about Corey. If I got to protest, picket, fight against your legislation, do all those kind of things, you have to talk with my bosses, my board of directors first. So I'm putting that on the table right now. That's there. And the mayor probably do the same thing, your boss, because you're going to end up embarrassing him. And that's not a good thing. Because, at Glenville, they fight, man, and they'll remember that. That's not good. So Corey, take that off your list before you go there. That's one of the main reasons I'm here. I read that. I'm not a happy camper with that. Take that off your list. And you got to talk with the residents this summer. You have a meeting with them, because you put this in front of the planning. Then what the media is going to do, they'll take it in. You saying that you're not there about closing Corey yet, but they'll take it and make it that you close Corey. And then guess what? The mayor and I will get all the phone calls. So I'm not there for that piece. And Chief, you know better than that. You and I were classmates. You know how to do strategic planning. Just take that off. You already saying you're going to do it. Don't introduce that. You introduce it to me, don't do that. No, I'm not there. We're going to fight you on Corey. Right? You got me mad already. I'm mad and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. The director, you visited Corey with me. Remember, we went in there and we talked with the people at Corey Recreation Center, because we looked at things that we might need. See, I'm not thinking closing Corey. We look at what equipment do we need to bring into Corey? How do we make Corey work? How do we bringing children into Corey Recreation Center, because that part of the neighborhood don't have anything, and we gotta, you asked the director, we went in there, isn't that right? And we visited Glenville also. When she first came, we went on a tour of Glenville Recreation Center as well as Corey, because I wanted to upgrade Glenville as well as Corey Recreation Center. And she took notes, and the director talked with the residents at Glenville Recreation Center. You did. I think that was about a month ago. So that's where I'm at, because you got to talk with them. You can't just start slicing and dicing, and you don't talk with people. So please take that off. Take that off. It's not open for to take it to the planning committee at all. So that's where I'm at on that piece. And I'll close in a second. In your strategic plan, you mentioned, Director, when we were together viewing the recreation sites, that we were going to have in here for people with disabilities in your strategic plan. I don't see it in there. It's not stating that. It's not saying that at all about people, for people with disabilities. I mean, it's bad, Chief. I mean, Chairman, when children pass by parks, when they pass by the recreation center, and then they can't go swimming there, they can't go to any of the facilities in the recreation centers or in the or at the parks, because we got to cater to also people with disabilities. And you got to believe in the abilities and not the disabilities. And you have to do that. Because you know what, and I'll close. Let's say you have two children, brother and sisters. The brother could go play in the park, but his sister might have a disability and she can't go play in the park. And so she looking outside saying, I wish I could go play there. I wish I could play at Shirley Chisholm Park or whatever the case may be, and she can't. You gotta open that up. And then in the culture and the behavior, you have to let people know with disabilities that they could come and participate too. You gotta have that in your culture. And in your strategic plan, there's nothing in there about culture. There's nothing in there about culture. When you write a strategic plan, Mr. Chairman, you have to have, culture is 80-something%. Training is ongoing. And Richard Stark knows that. He knows culture is very, very important. Right now, while we're pushing your strategic plan, you could be training people to move forward, to have a better culture. Customer service culture, culture of training, the culture of changing how they recruit people, the culture of building stakeholders with other institutions, to bring in churches, to bring in Martin D. Porres Center, to bring in other 501c3s, to bring in, you mentioned Murtis Taylor. You just passed legislation for Murtis Taylor in the rec centers, but when they go into the rec centers, the people see the same abject poverty where they came from. They got to see hope. So in that culture, you got to have that in your strategic plan.
Councilman, we agree 100%, and accessibility and culture are all throughout the strategic plan, and Director Nichols is going to say a few words on that.
Sure, how many and I'm not beating you up, I like you, Director. You know, one thing about culture, you have to train workers, and that's ongoing. And you have to have that in your strategic plan when you do your strategy review. Where are we at on training our workers? How is it going? How is attrition in our area right there? All that culture is important to change the behavior. The reason we brought the director here really is to change the behavior of the workers.
Thank you. Through the chair to the councilman, I would add that the city was very intentional in terms of wanting to include accessibility, connectivity, and culture in the plan, and that while those words might not be as clearly delineated as you might prefer, we do talk about access and we do talk about training. I would add that as we look at our facilities, we definitely look from an ADA perspective. We definitely look from universal perspective, and we do want to make sure we do that. As it relates to training and culture, in my tenure of nearly 6 months, I, for the first time in over 10 years, sent some Parks and Recreation staff to the Ohio Park and Recreation Association Conference. We will be attending on an annual basis. Our intention is also to attend the National Recreation and Park Association Conference. This week, we have a networking meeting with our regional partners, our regional other municipalities, to meet with other park and recreation professionals. I recently connected with our rink roundtable that's for the region so that our rink staff can attend. In May, we have another networking meeting through the state. So I guess what I'm sharing is that training, culture, accessibility, all of those are important to us. It is in the language of the master plan, not in those specific words, but it's certainly something that we will be focusing on.
You know, we're going back to Corey, when you look at the background history, the Jackson administration, I wasn't a council member over there at that time. They were looking to close Corey. And then they met with the residents in that area. And it was Councilmember Jeff Johnson at the time, and they decided, matter of fact, I came over there to work with him, and I put some money into it to make sure that they did not close Corey. I mean, that's the background history of it. You know, when you do a master plan and you do your strategic planning, if you had to talk with the residents, then you would understand, because that tells you the way. And why they didn't close Corey, if you had to talk with me, or he's now the judge, Jeff Johnson, you got to do background history before you make moves on any of the recreation centers, through the chair to the chief. And you know that, Director. You know.
Through the Chairman of the Council, and yes, we did lots of community engagement, and I think the real challenges here are that we have a system with too many amenities for us to properly maintain, and it's going to take some bold moves to move forward under the Bibb administration to figure out how to best provide the right amenities to our residents, the amenities that they need, in a way that we can make them high quality and well maintained. And there's no easy answer to this. I can tell you that there's been many plans to close many facilities over the years, and to my knowledge, none of those plans have ever moved forward. So it's really going to take a strong partnership between the mayor's office, our staff, and city council to determine how do we right-size the ship so that we have a great park and rec system for all of our residents. And we don't have an answer for that today. This is a recommendation of what we heard from the residents and an analysis based upon peer cities, based upon level of service, industry standards, that we now have to work on to figure out how to implement, what pieces make sense to implement, but it's going to take some bold moves. Otherwise, you know, this, like Councilman Hairston said about state funding, the state doesn't give us operating dollars. They just don't. They give us capital dollars, and the challenge is we always have enough money to build certain things every year. We never have enough money to maintain everything that we have.
No, you don't. You don't.
So it's going to be challenging, Councilman.
You know what?
Okay, Councilman, we do have a
I'm
meeting coming up.
close.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing and respond? Just, I know
Yes,
it's not
go
my
ahead, go ahead.
committee, but he was talking about closing one of my reps.
I know
so
you're
I
upset.
came in
Yeah,
for
I
to
know
let
you're
him where
upset.
I was at. You got to talk with people. Here's the thing, Mr. Chairman. I'm not the boss. The mayor is not the boss. He may be your boss, but the residents, they're my bosses. They're my board of directors. And you know what? Everybody at this table, they're your boss and board of directors also. So before you put something in there like that, you need to at least have a community meeting so you can sit back and talk with them and let them know that they're your bosses as well. Because that's just where I'm at, and I'll close with that.
All right, thank you, Councilman Conwell. Councilman Deborah Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo my two colleagues, Harrison and Conwell, to say the least that to promote a levy at this time wouldn't be beneficial. right now for our residents and our community of the parks, because right now we are trying to design something for the residents to be accommodated in the parks and at the rec centers. As you well know, Chief, how intense that we had our meetings in the last 2 years for the recreation centers in Ward 4. And we have done a phenomenal job of moving forward, of adding amenities in all 3 recs. And to say the least, that was astounding that we was able to accommodate our residents in Alexander Hamilton, Selma George, and Woodland Rec. So the residents are pleased to a point of seeing what can be done, and we have accomplished things that they are now able to enjoy in the recs in many, many years. So I'm very sentiment to Harrison and Conwell of their recs and their park centers of what they don't have, because what we didn't have, we are now getting them. And for me to come into this position, working so hard to see what we didn't have, and what we're getting and what we have already gotten, is a milestone. And I do understand that bringing our new director in, into her position, and she's seeing what more can be done in her position and providing other stuff of what you're trying to present in this package, that you gave us. I can see it from, y'all point of view, because you separated Parks and Rec from, from Public Works for this reason alone, because it has not been attentive to in many, many years. However, it's still much to do prior to presenting a levy right now because of our taxpayers. We're trying to accommodate them with so many other things that they want to see, but putting the burden of them paying more money on additional tax right now is just outrageous, because as I will agree with Councilman Conwell, we get the ball of the butt all the time of what is needed and what's not needed. So this was a good presentation. However, by us doing so much now to clean up, because we ourselves as council members trying to clean up, what able we to provide right now in the moment, to give the residents some needs where they can attend the rec centers, because our numbers are low. Our numbers are low because of our population has dropped, and what we just did with redistricting, that also hurted the recs per se, because as Hamilton is low in numbers, Woodland Rec is low in numbers. And then Zelma is the highest number rec in the ward because it's positioned at Loop Eastern Park, where everyone comes. But we're trying to get recognition for our, for our residents to attend all the recs, all the 22 recs that's still available. So I think we are trying to understand how to do that right now. But to topic a levy on top of what we trying to do right now is pretty much not even for the residents, but also for the council members. So I'll just say the least that I'm happy of what the recs, of all the recs in Ward 4 has been given, and more to come. So I can say that much. The amenities have been exceptional, accepted by the residents from their suggestions. So that's why they got what they got, and also of you knowing, what was needed. The new boys and girls, the new boys and girls restrooms are being implemented in Zelma George. Hopefully in the future, we're gonna get them in Hamilton Rec, if it's not considered of being closing. Also with Woodland Rec, in the future of the renovation has been proposed to me before I even came council. That's something that's still on the menu, but also in your booklet, it states that consider reproposing Woodland for other city or uses or closing per se. And I know that's up in the air, but hopefully that's not going to be considered. And just looking at Hamilton Rec, where it was a bathhouse years ago, and then you're trying to do more to incorporate different programs and also add more amenities, to Hamilton. But I just say that in closing, at this time, I think that's pretty much to put on our shoulders when we're trying to clean up to see what more we needed, what's more needed in our recreations and at our parks. I talked with Dr. Nichols, when she came in. She's looking to incorporate so many other amenities at the park per se, so more of our residents, can come and enjoy. So I see her plan, I see her future plan, because we have to look for the long-term sustainability of more people moving in our community, giving them more of what we want them to have so they can enjoy and be safe in our communities now. And they want that. And we know that's a stepping stone, but I think we have to kind of push back on this levy and just take one step at a time and revisit our residents with more meetings. Because I know we had meetings currently of how we move forward with all three recs in Ward 4. But as a whole, I'm not familiar with the other recs of the other councils that they have to oversee. But I think we need to push back a little bit, get more input from the residents of this packet per se, and also, work with the council. So that's what I have to say. I'm closing. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Gray. Director, we are at the beginning of our questions, and we're going to have to convene again. We're going to have to go over this and talk about this. It's a lot to digest, so stay tuned. So, is there any other questions for the director before we adjourn? Yes. Yes. All right. Seeing no further questions, I hereby call the Municipal Services and Properties Committee adjourned to the next call of the chair.